It almost seems like something out of a reunion episode of a Bravo show or something. But it's interesting because Pam Bondi actually, to be honest, has not really been around all that much. When we've been talking about the Epstein files, the person they've been putting out is Todd Blanche, and now she's there on Capitol Hill and seems to be putting on a show of defiance. But I think the real question is over what? Over the finding out the truth about a child sex ring? It just seems like the wrong attitude for this issue.
Listen, I'm an institutionalist. I want there to be some iota of respect for the institution of Congress. I think this kind of performative theatrics, she says she's not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics, for somebody else's theatrics. Everything she did today was performative. And I say this as somebody who has known Pam Bondi for many years. I knew her back in Florida when she was Attorney General. I don't think this served anybody. I don't think these shouting matches, and let's just be, honest about it. When Democrats were in power in Congress, the shouting matches still went on. When Republicans are in power, the shouting matches still go. These congressional hearings have really degraded into
anything quite like this. I mean, regardless of political party. I mean, even Trump's other attorney generals, Bill Barr, Jeff Sessions, I don't know.
The part that really bothered me today, and I give MAGA a lot of credit. The one thing I give them credit for is not letting go of the Epstein files bone. They just never did. And there was people like Nancy Mace, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who defied Donald Trump and voted to release these files, and the MAGA blogosphere and podcast universe who never let it go. That being said, I thought today, Pam Bondi, having those victims, those survivors there, and the family of the survivors that have died, and not having the common courtesy of, at the very least, turning around and acknowledging their presence. And I do think those survivors are owed an apology by 4 administrations. Right. And she is right that Merrick Garland should have answered questions, but right now, today, this is her DOJ. It is up to her to prosecute if there's prosecutable crimes. It is up to her to release all the files and comply with the law that was passed. It is up to her to give justice and closure to those survivors. It was so shameful to me that those survivors got told and asked, raise your hand if you have called the DOJ and offered to testify. They all raised their hands, and none had been contacted by this DOJ, which is run by Pam Bondi, a woman from Florida who knows who Epstein is. That is damn disgusting and shameful.
Yeah, I mean, I pick up on that because I think the conversation today, I've been watching all the news, has been about the theatrics that were happening on Capitol Hill. But the reality is, the real conversation we should be talking about is the survivors. The conversation of how brave it is for them to even have been there. 1 in 5 women in America have experienced some sort of sexual assault. The reality is, this gives us the complete picture of what this administration is. They will do whatever to protect their sexual assaulter in chief, who was found liable for sexual assault before. The reality is, we're not having this conversation that protects women. It continues to perpetuate this situation and this culture in America where it makes women hard to come forward and actually say, this person did something extremely wrong to me. And that's the conversation we should be having. But I'm not surprised that this administration is deflecting from it, because let's look at the first Trump administration when the hearings around Kavanaugh, and Professor Ford actually was brave enough to share her story.
Even if we put the Trump of it aside for a second, there were still some really bizarre moments today. I mean, this is an interaction between Pam Bondi and Tom Massey, and he's asking her why the DOJ hasn't or didn't prosecute some people who are named in the Epstein files as being co-conspirators. And here's how she responded.
Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document?
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political
question.
joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700,
co-conspirator.
and we invited you
Gentlemen,
in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen.
Again, I just don't know who that serves, Scott. I mean, literally on that document, the name that is blacked out says co-conspirator. That should be an obvious non-redaction. And to not even acknowledge, I think that's a pretty big mistake. To not even acknowledge that, I think, and then make it about Thomas Massie and his relationship with Trump or whatever, seems to obscure the bigger issue, which is that there are potential perpetrators, alleged perpetrators, who are still being protected.
Well, look, I don't know how the redactions are made or not made. And look, obviously it was brought up and then they unredacted it and it's 3.5 million documents. And I have always wondered how in the world do you ever get it perfect? And I've also wondered, you know, the danger of accidentally or whatever, putting people's names out there who were victims, who shouldn't have their names out there. Anytime you're dumping this many documents, it's been worrisome. All of that having been said, this hearing today to me, look, I get the desire to fight because, look, and I agree with Anna, actually. These hearings are basically people show up, they make speeches, then they give the witness 10 seconds to respond, and then they yell at the witness. It's been going on for a long time. It makes these hearings useless. That having been said, at the DOJ, I think if I were advising them, I would advise them to do it more like Scott Bessent handles his hearings. It's not a lot of performative. It's not a lot of theatrics. He remains cool. He is in command of the facts, and that's how he chooses to do it. They come after him the same way, but he has a different style of how he carries himself and how he presents himself. I think that, truthfully, better serves the administration because it shows more confidence in what you're doing as opposed to just the fighting and the back and forth.
She must be doing it because she thinks somebody likes it.
Exactly. I mean, Bessent has the benefit of the kind of a financial view, which can be argued in multiple ways, and you can have facts. The facts are just not on their side in these particular hearings. You know, we just saw Patel, now we've seen Bondi. The New York Times called this a stall and brawl strategy. I think that is a perfect description of what it is because we see people constantly contorting themselves to try to defend the indefensible. They deflect instead of answering questions directly. They try to substitute passion for truth. They try to talk fast rather than straight talk. And that is all for one person only because it is a person who likes it, and that is Donald Trump. And so all of this genuflecting, I feel like every one of these people should have bloody knees because they are genuflecting to this man all the time.
But you know, if nothing else, she should have turned around to those survivors and said, my DOJ, we should have contacted you. I'm sorry we didn't. My DOJ will be on it, and we will be contacting you and getting your stories. That's just unacceptable.
Let me show you this image. This is Pan Bondi's notes. It was captured by a photographer, and it shows that they had taken over at the DOJ notes of what members, in this case, it was Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, what they searched when they went into the DOJ to look at the Epstein files. And I don't know, what does that tell you, Chris, about what the priorities were going into this hearing on the Bondi side of things?
I just totally agree with Anna. I think that we've absolutely lost what this is about. This should not be political. This really shouldn't. These women were victims of sexual assault, and we are continually just brushing over that for theater. And a number of their names were released here. They were victimized again. And I've seen this in my job a number of times. And we keep forgetting this over and over again. But then when the Attorney General gets up there and just wants to combat and just wants to yell, it seemed a lot more to me like an interview for the White House than it did, rather than trying to actually address the underlying problem. I mean, when you have a Republican like Massie saying, hey, listen, why aren't you going after these people? Why are you redacting names that say conspirator? And then you have Democrats on the other hand saying this. You have lots of Democrats in these files. You have lots of Republicans in these files. But we're forgetting all these women that are sitting right behind you. And I totally agree with Anna. I don't understand why you can't start a hearing and just simply say, I am sorry. I am sorry about not only what you have gone through, but I'm also sorry that my department released your names publicly.
Well,
that is not a big ask.
Well, Pam Bondi has clearly shown us that she has no soul and does not literally care about people's experiences, and that's why we couldn't get it, and I wouldn't have expected it from her.
It was also absolutely ridiculous. First, she was being very inconsistent with what Todd Blanche has said about some of these, in some of these answers. But it was ridiculous for her to say that she had nothing to do and no knowledge about the transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell, who is a monster and should be in the worst possible prison, not a prison camp.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
that she doesn't
is-
say, I disagree with what happened and I think she should be sent back to where she was.